Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kevin Lee Social. Thank you for tuning in. What initially began as an 8-part series interviewing entrepreneurs to share and inspire how they've successfully pivoted during COVID-19, I have decided not only to continue this series, but also to expand on the scope to understand and learn about people's craft, philosophy, the challenges they face in the industry, and their favorite failures that have helped shape them to become who they are today. By going deeper and understanding different thought leaders, businesses, and industries, the idea is to help cross-pollinate ideas applicable in your life and inspire action in this new norm we live in. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Today we have Brian Lai. Brian is a breathwork coach from Australia, currently based in Hong Kong. He had discovered breathwork during his journey to find answers to some health issues he had been living with for a while. His search eventually led him to Wim Hof, who is best known for his superhuman abilities and 26 world records. From 2016 to 2017, he had the privilege to be trained directly by Wim Hof, becoming the first certified instructor of the Wim Hof method in Australia and Asia. He has since continued to grow in the field of breathwork, studying with other day modern breathwork masters, including Patrick McEwen from the Oxygen Advantage, Stig Severinson, the world's greatest freediver, Casper van der Meulen, biohacking breathwork, and Dan Brulé, the breath coach to Tony Robbins and Navy SEALs. Please, everyone, help me welcome Brian Lai. Hey, Brian, welcome to the show. Thank you, my friend, for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Kev.
Hey, out of the people I know, I think you're probably the most deepest into breathwork in all of experience. You've learned from world leaders such as Wim Hof, the Iceman, Casper, Dan Brulé, Tony Robbins, breathwork teacher, Dr. Patrick McEwen, and I'm sure many others. How did all this breathwork craze begin for you, or at what point did everything shift?
So for, I guess, my breathwork journey was something that was completely random. It was not planned, or it was not like if you had asked me, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that this is what I'll be doing now today, I would have no clue. So I didn't even know about the world of breathing until about 6 years ago. So I started kind of getting into this kind of stuff, getting into that more deeper inner work when I kind of went through a bit of some of my own mental health and some like physical health issues that I had been kind of dealing with for a while, and it kind of accumulated to a point where I was battling with really bad anxiety, and I was burnt out from stress, from some projects, some work projects, and everything just kind of, something just happened. Everything just came crashing down at that point. And it led me to seek out how I can fix this, how I can resolve this. And it kind of ultimately led me to meditation, to Vipassana meditation. And that's that 10-day retreat. Have you heard of those ones before?
Yeah,
the silent retreats?
I heard it's one of the most challenging things people can ever do.
Yeah, I mean it's actually 12 days, because they don't count the first half day and the last half day, so it's actually 12 days, but it's 10 full days in between. And I had no experience going in. I've never meditated before. I didn't have any friends that were into any of this stuff. All my friends are just they're just into sports and stuff like that. So it was completely a foreign world to me. But I had heard things about meditation, and and a lot of the people that I looked up to and I admired, often talked about having meditation as one of their tools in their toolkit. So it was always something I was open to, always something that I was like, probably I should do, and then, during that time, I think my brother was starting his journey on this kind of path too. And we both ended up doing Vipassana together. And that was in Blue Mountains in New South Wales, which is beautiful. If you ever have a chance, it's also free as well. It's paid by donation. Like whatever you feel after the experience, you can pay whatever you want, and it's like seriously 5-star view and everything. But led me to Vipassana, and that literally for 10 days you're meditating for like 10 hours a day. So that's like 100 hours of meditation. And, starting from knowing nothing to going straight to that, it was, you learn, you get thrown in the deep end, and, you sink or you swim. And ultimately, I survived it. I came out of it, and it was just an absolute game changer, the whole meditation thing. Before that, I thought it was maybe some religious thing, or I thought it was maybe some kind of woo-woo thing. And I even had like a lot of friends that told me to not go. When I mentioned it, I was like, hey, I booked myself into this like kind of meditation place, and thinking of going. And then these people just, because they had no clue as well, and they'll tell me that maybe I should just go on a holiday, go to Thailand, kick back on a beach for a couple of weeks, and just blow off some steam like that. And it had crossed my mind many times. I almost pulled out like a bunch of times, but then something was just kind of pulling me towards it. At that time I was going through some pretty kind of like, I was in a bad place.
Yep.
And I was kind of like, I guess I was desperate to figure something out, to get myself out of that rut that I was in. And it led me to there, and it was an absolute game changer in terms of like just showing me that what the mind is capable of. And this whole time, like all the way up until that point, my mind was just like I had no control of it, like absolutely no control of it. And it was so loud, and it was so much chatter and all this like BS going on, and and all these thoughts and things in my head that didn't serve me, and I was like, I can't believe I lived like this many years of my life, like two and a half decades of my life, like that, So it was an absolute game changer, an absolute eye opener for me. But over time, they actually recommend that to keep up the practice, you do 2 hours a day, like 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, and, I mean, some people might be able to do it. I kept it up for maybe a couple months, but after that, it's a bit, it's not that practical for a lot of people, 1 hour, 1 hour, 2 hours a day, So, in a time poor society like we have now, we've got so many distractions. It's kind of difficult to put aside 2 hours to just sit there and not do anything. And meditation is it's not that easy sometimes. Like there's times that you can just sit there and you might fall asleep, or you might nothing happens, or nothing comes or anything like that, or and you sometimes it's not, for me it wasn't that practical, it wasn't that effective at all times. Whereas then one day, I think maybe like half a year later, I was actually after a mushroom trip back in Australia. So after we had a mushroom trip, we just came back home, and we just watching random like YouTube clips. And as you do when you're like that, in that state. So it was kind of towards the end of it, we're just kicking back and just chatting and just watching YouTube clips, and then all of a sudden, like this random documentary came up. It was that Vice documentary on Wim Hof, which was, I think, released in 2015. So I saw it in 2015, and when I watched it, it was just everything that Wim was saying that he could do, everything that he could do, and all the the people that the students that he was teaching, what they could do. It just completely resonated with me, because growing up in Australia, I was not a very confident kid. I wasn't very confident. I was confident up until a certain point, but then and then I don't know, hit a certain age, and then it just kind of shifted, and I somehow just kind of just lost my confidence, and I was very very insecure a lot of times. A lot of times I was in fear, and I just wasn't able to really reach my potential, growing up as a kid in Australia. And I would always get sick a lot. Like my immune system was not very great, and physically I was quite strong because I played a lot of sports, but inside, mentally, physically inside, like my immune system, my mental state, it wasn't the strongest. And I would go through some kind of dark times sometimes. And, I know that's very common these days, but everything that was said in that documentary with Wim it was just completely resonated with me. I always wanted to be better, to be able to be a better version of myself, to be the best of myself, and I didn't know how to, and when I saw this, it was like, it just kind of clicked. Like, I don't really know exactly what this guy's doing, but what the outcome of it and what's actually happened, I'm like, I need to learn more about this. And then so I started, like, literally after the documentary, I turned to my friends, and everyone's like, yeah, that was pretty cool. But I had that look in my eye. I was like, I need to find this dude. I need to learn from him, like. And then I just went on the internet. I think the next morning, and I was just trying to find out how can I learn from this dude. And he was booked out. This was before he blew up. Like, he was already starting to get a bit popular, but this was before he was on, like, Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss, and he really, really blew up. And he started teaching, like, Oprah and all the celebs and stuff. So this is just before that. So I caught him just before the wave just blew up. And but yeah, he was booked out for, like, I think 1 or 2 years when I searched in Europe. So I was like, I kind of just thought that, it wasn't meant to be, And then about a few days later, I somehow just tried again, and he released a course in Australia because his new wife that he has a new kid with is Aussie. So he's been, he had to go back to Australia every now and then. So he did a course in Australia, and I was like the first person to sign up for that. And that was in early 2016, and so I was in Hong Kong then. Even though I grew up in Australia, I've been in Hong Kong for, like, the last probably 7-8 years.
Yeah.
And so I flew back from Hong Kong to Australia, down to, like, pretty southern part of Victoria, in the middle of, I think it was winter. That was like a week of training, a week where we all lived together, we all, ate together, and just every morning we wake up, first thing we would do is just go to the beach. This is like really early, freezing. I'm really bad at the cold myself. I'm really horrible with the cold, which is why I'm doing this kind of stuff, because I'm so bad at it. And then, yes, every morning would wake up, go for, like, a cold dip, a cold swim, do some kind of, some sort of exercise or something at the beach, which it's, for a lot of people that sounds brutal, sounds like, something you wouldn't want to do. But once you're there and the sun's rising and you just, your feet are grounded in the sand, and, the water's there, and you're doing breath work with, like, a bunch of your mates, and you're getting into the ocean, trying to override that fear response. Like, it's a really, really awesome way to start the day. Like, after that, you feel like you can do anything. You feel like $1 million, So it's difficult, but it's it's a great way to start the day. And then after that, we would go back to the camp, and then we would be doing breathing for about 2-3 hours or something like that, exercises and different kind of stuff with Wim. And often, when we're doing exercises, he'd be, like, jamming away on his guitar and, singing his crazy songs and crack a lot of his dad jokes. And then throughout the day, we just kind of, like, just did our thing, and, we just wasn't too much going on in the middle of the day. And then when evening hit, when the sun set and it was dark, that's when we did the ice baths. So that's when we started doing the ice training. And we trained for about a week. And I remember the first day I did my very first ice bath. And this had no experience. I had no experience. And we didn't even do any sort of breathing to prepare for it. We just went in. And it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. I couldn't believe how cold it was. I couldn't believe how painful it was. Have you done an ice bath before?
I have, actually. I remember the first time I did it as well. It was excruciating. It was like somebody was stabbing me in the kidneys.
Yeah, it feels like someone's stabbing you from every single direction, and it just hits you to your core, and it's like, you can't believe that this amount of pain is possible, Well, for a guy, that's kind of, I'm sure women go through a lot more pain when they're giving birth, but for a guy, I had never gone through that amount of pain
Yeah.
that quickly in that such an instant, you know. And I was just shocked, you know. I was just like, I was shocked. I went in and I just froze. I was like, holy shit! I can't believe how brutal this is, how crazy this is. But then, you know, Wim started guiding us through, you know, just told us to control our breathing, relax our breathing. And we started singing. He started guiding us, like started singing. I can't remember what song. Somewhere over the rainbow, and we just sing that kind of. And you just kind of start to relax. And that was day one. And day two is when we started all the training. You know, all the breath work and all that kind of stuff. And then yeah, like we just got better and better and better at it, day after day. And it was kind of like almost felt like a puberty, like a second puberty. You know, like yeah, like a second puberty. Like you go from, you know, kid to man, and then man to like superhuman kind of thing. But yeah, it was a really enlightening experience. It was an absolute game changer. Like Vipassana meditation was a game changer. This was on a different level. Like this was like, you know, level 2 or something. You know, like the next level.
Yeah.
And then since then, I've just I mean, I had no plan to become a coach or a teacher. It was just really for myself when I went the first time. And then I remember there was a few people there that really were inspiring to me. And actually, you know what? Everyone there was pretty inspiring.
Yeah.
But there was a few specific people that really stood out. And one of them was this girl that had depression. She was suicidal. And her name was Pritika. And I think she's in New Zealand now. She's real cool, and you know, we don't keep in touch that often, but we still, you know, we still chat every now and then. And she's doing okay. You know, she goes through ups and downs. It's just like us all. But you know, going into it, she was suicidal. She was really depressed, and she was just at her wits' end. You know, she was at the last straw kind of thing, and she almost pulled out of the course. But then I think the organizer she convinced her to just try this one last time. This one last thing, just give this a go. And she came, and then, you know, Wim on the first day said that, you know, we went through the room and everyone's kind of saying, you know, their reasons of being there. And she said that, you know, she's going through these things. And then, you know, Wim said, I'm going to be able to help you, like, fix you within a week, you know. And for me, that was a very foreign, I just couldn't believe it, because through my own personal experience, but also through a lot of family members and friends who suffer from mental health issues, and some of them for decades and decades, for most of their lives actually. And for me, I was like, like something like that, how can it be fixed that quickly, you know? So I wasn't close to the idea that it could be fixed, but I was a bit skeptical that, you know, it could be done in such a short amount of time. And sure enough, after a week, she was better, you know. And I asked her on the last day when we were all sitting around the campfire, and after just having a chat with her and asking her about, talking about her experience, and then I asked her, you know, do you think you're healed? And she said yes. And I said, and how do you know? Like, and then she said that she no longer thinks about killing herself. You know, before she would look everywhere she would look, she would think about killing herself. Like, she would see a tree, and then she would envision, like, you know, how to hang herself. You know, or you know, pretty dark stuff. You know, and she said, yeah, she does that. That thought was not popping up in her head anymore. And she said it was in the ice. There was something happening in the ice. The ice somehow reconnected her. She felt like, because, you know, when people go through mental health issues, that a lot of times they feel disconnected, not just with people outside and the world around them, but also with themselves. And for her, she said it was something that happened in the ice bath that she felt that disconnection reconnect, and she felt herself again. Okay. And obviously the breath work helps. The breath work is what prepares you for the ice bath. And when I heard those kind of stories, and you know, many other stories as well, you know, they had people that had physical, like there was a guy called Manuel, and he's awesome. And he had arthritis, his fingers like all fused like that, and he couldn't really move them, and he had a lot of pain in the joints like all the time, you know. And after by day 2, he said the pain was manageable. He could move, he could enjoy, you know, his life a lot more. Just the quality of his life itself had improved because he could move his fingers, and you know, there wasn't that much pain anymore. And this is just a couple stories. And there, you know, there was like a tribe of about 20 people. This was really lucky, a pretty small group, and we all got to know most of us, and you know, just after hearing all those inspirational stories and just seeing the change in myself, you know, it really for the first time showed me what was holding me back in my life, you know, and it showed me that, you know, I learned through that experience that what was holding me back was myself, you know, and it's always been myself, you know. And, you know, when you kind of get to that realization and you stop blaming, you know, other people and other things for, you know, the things that are going wrong in your life, and you start taking full responsibility of it, you know, and then you just, it becomes a very empowering thing, you know. And then you have also not just that realization, but you have these tools that you're given, the tools that you've learned from Wim, these breathing tools, you know, that really, they really are tools. And that, you know, that those tools armed with this mindset, you're a different person, you know, you are a much better version of yourself. You know, you've kind of shed kind of that, whatever's kind of weighing you down, you know. Obviously, you know, it's still a work in progress, but it was like the first major kind of, you know, it's like when Goku turned Super Saiyan for the first time, you know. You know, after that, there's many levels, but it's that first time, you know.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But that's kind of that's kind of how. And then for the next 2 years, I kept training with Wim to become an instructor, and I think I was in the first group of instructors from Australia and Asia, and then obviously like when I was doing it, it was still very, very new, very, very new. So I was the only one that was teaching it in Hong Kong, China, that area. And I think there's some in China now, but I'm still the only one that's doing this in Hong Kong. So it's still not that mainstream over in this area, in this part of the world. It's I mean, it's getting kind of quite big in the US and parts of Europe and stuff, but in Asia, it's relatively lesser known.
Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing that story. Very deep, so many transformative experiences that you shared. And while I was listening to it, I'm curious to hear your perspective or understanding of how you think breath work and ice baths, or the exposure to that, helps people transform, whether it's physically or mentally.
Like out of the two, I mean, they're both incredible tools. I would say start with the breath first, like, because, you know, that's accessible to everyone. We all breathe, obviously, and that's something that we can make an instant pivot, an instant shift in, you know, right here, right now. You know, if you decide to, so how it impacts people, how it benefits them, is basically, if you think about the human body, okay, try to think about the human body more like say like a vehicle, you know, like a machine. You know, it's a very complex biological machine, and within that machine is your nervous system, and the nervous system is what controls it pretty much dictates our state, you know, how we are, and you know, our state is, you know, our mood, and over time that becomes our personality, you know. So it is literally us, you know. So for basically the nervous system, for most people, they are unaware that they can actually control it. They can actually influence the nervous system, and specifically the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is called autonomic because, you know, originally doctors thought that, or researchers thought that you can't change it. You know, you can't. Sorry, it's not that you can't change it. You can't control it. It was involuntary. You know, like things like, you know, maybe like your heartbeat, or, you know, like, you know, how your eyes blink and how you digest food, and, you know, certain things that, you know, are outside of your control, you know, and it just runs automatically. Um, and, you know, in most cases, that's how it should be. You know, we should just by default run like a well-oiled machine, you know. But unfortunately, over time, it's not the case. And so our breathing is one of the access points. It's one of the entry points into the nervous system. It's one of the few things that we can do that we have control of, that we have conscious control of, that we can actually alter and manipulate the nervous system, which means we can control and manipulate our state, you know, and our state, what I just mentioned, our state is literally us, you know, whether it's our physical, emotional, or mental state, or even spiritual state. These states are us, and these states are the nervous system, and the nervous system is controlled by the breath, or it can be controlled by the breath. So your breathing is pretty much tied to all the systems and functions of the human body. And, you know, when you begin to manipulate and can change the way you breathe, the breath literally is like the remote control to your nervous system. So that's why, you know, monks and yogis and mystics have been using breath work for thousands and thousands of years, you know. But it's been lost in mainstream society, in modern society. It's only in, you know, maybe in the last few decades, especially with a lot of more scientific research kind of showing the benefits of breath work and how breath can actually influence involuntary, what things that were thought to be involuntary, like our nervous system, and our states, you know. So now it's been adopted by, you know, Navy SEALs, you know, military, you know, Silicon Valley, you know, the Silicon Valley people, you know, like biohackers, you know, UFC fighters, you know, like just, you know, just the world's top performers, you know, the most upper echelon of top performers, you know, people even like, you know, Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, you know, they're all onto breath work, you know. And they've realized, and they're onto the breath work because they've made the realization that basically for most people, every state of mind, state of body that they're in is followed by a state of breath. Okay, so what that means is, for example, if you're stressed out, your breathing pattern, or your breathing, you know, how you breathe is going to be like a stressful breathing pattern. And if you're, for example, anxious, you're going to have an anxious breathing pattern, you know. And if you're in fear, or, you know, whatever state, or even calm, happy, you know, you're going to have a calm, happy kind of breath, right? So every state that you're in is followed by a certain breathing pattern. Okay, so for most people, that's how it is, you know. But the little secret is, so the little secret is that it goes both ways. So it's bi-directional. So you can control your breath to control your state. Okay, so like, you know, for most people, you know, their state controls their breath. So it's kind of like, you know, the dog wags the tail, but in this case, you can flip it around and you can wag the tail to wag the dog, you know.
Yeah.
So, and this is the secret that all these top performers have figured out. So, because really, what holds us back in life, you know, it's really like, you know, our state, how we feel, you know, like when you wake up in the morning and you wake up on the wrong side of bed, and you're in a shitty mood, and you're not motivated, you're low on energy, then, you know, you're obviously not going to be at your best. You're not going to achieve your best in life. But if you wake up and you're in a good state, you know, you're in a beautiful state, you feel good, you know, you feel energetic, you feel, you know, you're not overly stressed in a bad way, you know, and you're in a kind of a more, you know, neutral state or parasympathetic state, you know. And that's a state, if you look at the polyvagal theory, that's the state where social engagement is more, you know, because when you're in a heightened state, like a fight or flight mode, a stressful state, you know, you don't learn that well, and, you know, you're not really social. You don't want to be social with people, you know. You're focused on the stress, you're focused on the threat, the task at hand, whatever it is, you know. So different states, you know, to kind of dictate how you are, you know. And over time, that is you. That's ultimately your life, you know. So if you can actually control your state, then to me, ultimately, that's freedom, you know, because you're no longer like a victim to, you know, the things that happen around you. You know, like someone says something to you at work that offends you, and then you're upset for the whole day, you know. Or you have like a bad divorce, you know, or a breakup. and and you've always had that friend, or you've heard of someone where, they're divorced, and they've been divorced for like 50 years and they're still not over it, and, it's just these things that, we kind of relive these kind of traumas, and we relive these bad things over and over again, these bad states, and it comes all back to the breath. The breath is what is tied to all that. And if you can control your breath, you can control your state. And to me, that's freedom. That's ultimately freedom. You're no longer a victim of everything around you, but you can use your breath to lead your state, instead of the other way around.
Yeah, that's a beautiful statement. How the breath guides your state. Thank you for explaining it in so much detail, because when you mention breath work to a lot of people, they just think, what do you mean breath work? We all breathe. What's the fuss about breath work? And I think you've done it justice to really explain the science behind it, and the understanding, and why so many people are getting into it. There's so much, and like you said, it's absolute freedom. Things happen around us all the time. There's triggers constantly. There's so many things outside of our control, but every time we're able to tap into it and shift it within ourselves, that provides us that extra tool and weapon or power of freedom, which is amazing.
Yeah, for sure. It's we tend to, as humans, especially in today's society, we're very skeptical of everything, and we also tend to overestimate, and always undersimplify things, and we always think maybe for something to really get us back to how to feel the best, it needs to be something that's really expensive or really complicated, and that's just how we kind of were wired in these days. But nature is ironic. Nature is very funny, and the thing that the lowest hanging fruit to improve our performance, the ultimate thing to improve our performance, it's right in front of us, it's right there. Our nose. It's literally there, and it's always been there, but meanwhile, people are going out spending thousands of dollars on all these different things to try and help their performance, how many times do you go to, in Hong Kong, you go to Sheung or Singapore, those hippie, those kind of hipster kind of neighborhoods like Surrey Hills, Newtown and stuff. How many times you go there and you see all these people buying a $20 green shake with kale and beetroot, and $20, like $150 Hong Kong dollars for a shake, and that's to help, aside from the nutrients, that stuff is to help you kind of alkalize your system, alkalize your body, right? And one of the quickest ways and direct ways to alkalize your blood, your system, is your breathing, because literally you're getting the oxygen in, and you're literally manipulating the ratios of oxygen and carbon dioxide like that, so it's not to say those shakes, those juices aren't delicious, quite overpriced. They're very delicious, but there's much easier ways, and it's right there. It's free once you learn it. It's accessible, and it's really powerful, man. I don't know if you listen to James Nestor on Joe Rogan. James Nestor is this guy that wrote a book called Breathe recently, and it's an amazing book. I would recommend everyone that's interested in this topic to get Breathe. It doesn't specifically break down too many techniques and stuff, but it just kind of goes through the history of how we've ended up how we are now, how collectively as a species we are one of the worst breathers. We are the worst breather in the animal kingdom. We all kind of breathe in a compromised manner. And so it's like 8, 9 out of 10 people are breathing in a suboptimal manner. So, when you think about that, a lot of people breathing bad. A lot of my students, for example, they're like, oh, I'm breathing bad, and they see it as a bad thing, but if you reframe it, it's actually a really good thing, in my opinion. Why is it a good thing? Obviously, it's not great for your health to breathe bad, but what I'm saying is that whoever you are, and you've come to my class, or you've gone to seek a breathwork coach, you've already gotten this far in life. You've done pretty well in life so far, and your breathing has been off. So you've gone this far in life, and you've only been on gear 2. You're only using gear 2 out of 6 gears. Now with the breath, and not just the breath, but other tools as well, you can now go from gear 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. So wherever you are in life right now, and you've never ventured into breath work or mastering it, like learning how the breath impacts performance and stuff, you're missing out. But if you get in on it, then dude, like it's like it's seriously like so much return on investment, for something that's so simple,
Wow, I
like
love
it's
that analogy.
yeah, I keep losing track of. I don't know what your question was
No,
anymore.
absolutely not. Yeah, it's all valuable info that you're sharing, and obviously you're one of you're probably the first Wim Hof certified instructor in Hong Kong. You're one of the only ones that are doing it over there, and you've learned from all these other amazing people. How are you putting this together? How are you sharing it with people? I know that you've launched Primal Breathwork. Can you share with us more about your work now?
Yeah, so it started as so I called my brand Primal Breathwork. To be honest, it doesn't really, it's more. I guess it just sounded cool. I just like the word primal, So I think actually I was actually. Have you heard of that brand Primal Kitchen?
Yes, I have.
I think it's like Mark's system, and he has all these awesome keto products and stuff.
Yeah.
And I had like Primal Mayo, Primo, this, Primal that, and I was like, and I was using it at that time. I just like the primal word was just stuck in my head, and then all of a sudden I just thought, oh, why don't I call it Primal Breathwork? And breathwork is very primal. It's very ancient,
Absolutely.
So I was like, it just kind of sounded cool. It made sense. So I was like, hey, I'll just call it that, and then I started reaching out. Actually, there's a bit of a tiny bit of backstory as to how I started in Hong Kong. Is so after I got certified, for like a year after that, I didn't do anything. I didn't teach. I didn't do anything, and that's because I by nature, like growing up, I was actually very insecure kid. Didn't have much confidence, and public speaking was my worst fear. Like that was like probably my top one or my top two fears. Was public speaking. And every time I did public speaking in high school, when you have to, I was just like my heart was pounding. I was like, about to soil my pants. Like
Yeah.
It was just the worst thing for me. It's like I actually dreaded it. So the thought of teaching became kind of like I just kind of didn't want to. Like, I kind of started giving myself excuses, like, yeah, I'm busy with my business, and I have this mushroom supplement business. I'm busy with that, and I started giving myself all these excuses as to why I can't do. I shouldn't pursue the breathing, the whole breathwork thing. And if you've kind of looked at Wim Hof's story, Wim Hof's wife committed suicide because she had mental health. She had schizophrenia, and she committed suicide. And from there, that kind of was one of the catalysts for Wim to do what he does now. He was just to try and find some sort of natural, resolution for people like that, so people don't go through the same things. And then, so I came back to Hong Kong, and then I landed at nighttime. So I landed around 11 p.m. And then the next morning, I went out to have yum chow with my family, also a few relatives. And then after yum chow, so after brunch, after I walked through the shopping mall, and I need to walk through the shopping mall to get to back to my apartment. And as I was going through the shopping mall, a woman jumped off the top floor, and she landed like, I would say probably like 15 meters away from me. And I saw the whole thing, like splat, I saw everything, and it was pretty traumatic for a bit.
Yes.
And it actually came up in my ayahuasca session earlier in the year. But kind of after I kind of got through that process, that kind of trauma process, that kind of stuff that happened, at the time I was reading The Alchemist, and the Alchemist always talks about omens and signs and stuff, and I just kind of took that as a sign, as an omen, like whether it is, whether it wasn't, I don't know, I don't really care right now, but at that time I used it as fuel, as catalyst to kind of spark my journey of, you know, breathwork coaching. And after that event, and I had that switch inside go off, then I just pretty much approached as many people as I can, as many gyms, as many venues, as many yoga studios, meditation studios, and it's all kind of places in Hong Kong. I think I approached maybe like 80, 80 different places. You know, I reached out to about 80 different places in Hong
Oh,
Kong, and I think I maybe got like 4 replies out of that. Um, but out of those 4 replies were a couple people that, you know, took a chance on me, and one was Jen from Pure Yoga, and we're still good friends. You know, she's awesome. One was Chris from CrossFit Asphodel. So these 2 people gave me a chance to start teaching at their place, and from there, it's just every Wim Hof workshop that I've done has sold out since then, like every single one, you know. So, I mean, given a couple exceptions during COVID, um, but yeah, every single one. And, you know, that's not only what I teach a lot of other things, but it's just somehow kind of taken off here. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it's just somehow kind of picked up a lot of momentum. I have a lot of people that support me. You know, Lululemon sponsor me, they support me, and you know, a lot of people think it's just some yoga. They just make yoga pants, you know. But to be honest, they're a fantastic kind of platform. They're a fantastic company that really supports. You know, it really goes grassroots and supports the local community. And you know, I've just got all these people that are helping me with breath work, pushing me out there, and it's just been great. And it's just kind of, it keeps growing. Like, I really feel like I'm just kind of scratching the surface right now. I can't wait to really kind of really make a big change and really just kind of spread this kind of tool to as many people as I can in Hong Kong and Asia. I have been teaching. I taught in Japan and Korea as well. So I'm trying to always branch out to Asia as well, not just Hong Kong.
wow. Massive congratulations on the success of Primal Breathwork in Hong Kong. I know it's taken a lot of courage to get started, and starting it in a new space and being like the trendsetter over there and early adopter. I'm so happy as a friend to hear that they have been booked out back to back, with a few exceptions, but that's amazing. Kudos to you, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks, man. And you know, it's just, I'm just happy that a lot of people are learning about breath. You know, that's my goal, and yeah, it's very, very rewarding, super rewarding work.
Awesome. I wanted to ask for example, one of your workshops, if you could kind of paint a rough picture of someone wanting to sign up for your workshop, what would it kind of look like for them?
Well, it depends. So, like, because breathwork is so versatile, and I've learned from quite a few different teachers, different techniques. So, but let's just talk about, for example, the one that sells out a lot, which is the Wim Hof method experience that I do in Hong Kong. So, I do it a bit different to how they ask us to do it. They have a bit of a framework, the Wim Hof Method Academy. They have a bit of a framework as to how we should be doing it. It's just a suggestion, you know, it's obviously not compulsory. So I do it a bit differently from them, and I kind of combine a bit of different elements from all the different teachers that I've learned together. And we have a bit more of a focus on the Wim Hof method in the first half, but the first half of the workshop is really just about, you know, breath work in general, how breathing impacts, you know, everything I've just mentioned, for example. And also basically tools to self-regulate stress and, you know, anxiety, depression, stuff like that, and performance, energy, and stuff like that. And so it's just kind of different tools, mostly on the breath, but, you know, other tools as well. And it's just a workshop that kind of covers, you know, kind of regulating stress and your own energy, adaptation, stress resilience, and just breaking past your own limits, and, you know, all those kind of topics. But with breath work, it's really you experiencing the whole journey of the actual breath You know, like I'm simply guiding you. You are the one that's choosing to do the breath, to do the breathing, and you are making the, you know, you are shifting yourself in, like yourself. You know, you've gone from a passenger to the pilot. You know, you've gone from like, you know those cars that are automatic and manual. So
Mm.
you've just got from automatic and just switched to manual and taken over yourself. You know, and it's a very kind of interpersonal thing. It's your own journey. You know, and Bruce Lee said, you know, the ultimate truth is through first person inquiry. You know, it's through your own experience. It's not through secondhand knowledge. It's not through what other people tell you. It's through your own experience. And then you make up your mind. You decide through your own experience, you know, whether it's for you or not, you know.
Mm.
And that's just not for breath work as well, but that's the kind of mentality I adopt for everything, you know.
Yeah.
You kind of have to have your own experience of it in most cases, you know, to really have a, you know, a, a proper informed idea of whether that thing is going to serve you or not, you know.
Mm. You've also mentioned you work a lot. I mean, the Wim Hof method also is part of ice work as well. And when I was doing some research, you started like an ice tribe.
Yeah.
Are you? If you can share with us what the ice tribe is about, or and with ice baths and stuff, what are some benefits that come with it, and how often would you recommend something like that?
Yeah, so with the whole ice bath thing, it's more. It just kind of was more born out of my other workshops where people come to my workshop, they'll have an amazing experience, you know, and they blow their own mind because, you know, they've done this kind of thing, jump into the ice, you know, and they do this thing that they thought was impossible or they thought was, you know, they couldn't do, and they do it. You know, and once you're able to smash your own goals and you smash your limits, you know, it opens on, it unlocks something. I just had a lot of people just ask me like, when's the next ice bath event? When's the next ice bath event? And you know, and obviously I didn't want them to have to sit through another 4-hour workshop, you know, if they just want to do the ice bath, you know.
Right.
So I just started a community where we just, you know, we all get together. I guide everyone through some breathing, some breath work, like a breath work flow. And then we all start hopping to the ice, you know, and, you know, we got different, you know, some people can just come and chill and just hop in the ice once or twice. You know, other people like myself, I might, you know, hop into the ice, come out, maybe hop on the assault bike or do some push-ups and stuff, and then hop back in and then keep doing kind of rotations and, you know, working in different things. So it's kind of for everyone to really kind of do their own thing. Obviously, you know, I'm there to guide everyone. I'm there to watch over and make sure everything gets done in a safe manner, of course.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits of ice is I mean, you know, there's so many benefits. You can easily Google them, but like things like anti-inflammatory, cold shock proteins, you know, this helps circulation, recovery, you know, a lot of different things. And, you know, if you even kind of access deeper parts of the mind, you know, that Wim talks about, you know, and those are the parts that, you know, your opioids, your cannabinoid receptors, you know, deep down inside your system, they can begin to tap into. So there's all these kind of really cool things and even newer things that they're still learning. You know, ice baths have been around for a long, long time, obviously. And but aside from that, aside from all the physical benefits of that, the main reason I use it, and I believe it's also a main reason for a lot of other instructors and a lot of other people that do ice baths frequently, is that the ice is like a mirror. The ice bath is like a mirror, and what I mean by mirror, it's kind of like it's a mirror to your state. It's a mirror to, you know, how you are right then and there on that particular day in that moment. You know, when you hesitate, you know, when you stand and you're hesitating, you're overthinking, oh, I don't want to get in, you know, then you know you're not completely on that day, you know. But when you you know, wake up and you stand there, no hesitation, boom, just go in, do your thing, then you know you're on fire that day. You know, you're in that slipstream, you're in that flow state that day. You know, so it's just yeah. So it's a mirror. It's a mirror, and it helps you build resilience because you know, obviously, even hopping into a cold shower, you know, you have a lot of resistance if you don't do that often. You know,
Yeah.
And even if it's a cold shower, that's not that cold, but just even practicing small things like that, where you have a fear response, mentally you have a fear response come up, and you override it. And you change how you respond to it, and you do it differently. So instead of hesitating and not switching the hot shower to cold shower, even if it's for like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, that little victory could be enough to kind of set some things in motion to, for you to have a better and better day.
Yeah.
And that's what this researcher from Stanford, he's a really cool guy called Andrew Huberman, and that's what he talks about. He talks about, when people, the champions, or the people that really understand success, it's like for a lot of people, what they do is, when there's something they need to do, like a task, they see it as like a monumental kind of goal, like this big kind of thing to achieve. And when it's such a big thing to achieve, they get discouraged, because it's like, oh, wow, that's such a massive thing. Like, I don't think I can do it. I don't want, you start to have excuses and stuff. But a lot of like these high performers, what they do is they have, like, for example, they break down their whole day, what they need to do bit by bit by bit by bit. And as they get through that list of what they need to do, they start to tick it off. And every time you make a tick, you tick off that little thing, that little milestone, that little goal in your day. That's a dopamine release, know. And that is what keeps you going. That's what gives you motivation. That's what gives you drive to keep going. So these people have worked out, or maybe, just by, maybe not consciously, just, through their gut, but, having these tiny little things, little small doses of dopamine throughout the day is what keeps you going, to achieve ultimately that bigger goal along the line, But, I find myself, I procrastinate a lot. That's one of my biggest flaws. That's one of my biggest weaknesses, is procrastinating, and it's so easily to get caught up. You might be on Instagram, and, you're only supposed to be there, for a few minutes when you're on the toilet, right? And then you're scrolling, and half an hour later, you're still there, and you've learned something about, like, something that doesn't really matter, something about a refrigerator or something about an insect or something, some random stuff that you've just literally wasted half an hour that you could have done something more productive. And you get caught up in these little things, and procrastination is a big thing for me, and I'm sure a lot of people. But things like having these little routines and having these kind of step-by-step things, it for me, it helps a lot.
Many great points there. Agreed with the dopamine hits, little wins. I do a bit of cold showers myself, and I enjoy them. I've gotten used to them. They definitely give, like, when you turn on that cold, oh man, here we go, winter cold showers. But when you turn on the tap, you kind of get over that hurdle, and okay, I can do it. Once you get over that, you feel like you can take over anything else, because you've kind of gone through one of the hardest things.
And what do you do? What do you do when you turn that cold shower on? Like, you hijack your breath.
Yeah.
You breathe like that, right? And as soon as you slow down your breathing, as soon as you calm down your breathing, you're good again. You've adapted to the cold. And that's kind of the same as how you do an ice bath. Is the cold hijacks, the ice hijacks your breath, the stress hijacks your breath. And then when you control your breath, you control the exhale and the inhale, then you adapt. And you adapt. So, but that's not just cold, that's everything, that's like anything challenging in your life. It's your breath, so.
Absolutely. There is a lot of content out there on the web about, breathwork for beginners and slowing down your breath, basic box breath techniques, stuff like that. I know we're limited on time, so I wanted to segue quickly into...
That's fine. I can probably stay on for another, like, 20, 30 minutes. All good.
Perfect. Wanted to segue into breathing for performance. I know that you've worked with some world-class people like Alan Galani, which is a 4-time world champion. The guy is an absolute beast. And how does breathwork help someone at that level?
Sorry, I think your audio is kind of getting a bit of a lag delay. Okay, so for someone like him, is like the human body, the system inside, it's pretty much the same across the board, and we can always get better in terms of our breathing, and breathing there's a whole nother side of breathing that we haven't spoken about, that a lot of people are unaware of. So there's a guy called Patrick McEwen, I think you've probably heard of him, but he does something called breathwork. Breathwork is this ancient Russian not ancient, but an older Russian technique, and he's kind of got his own brand called Oxygen Advantage, and that's kind of like the yin and yang to the Wim Hof method. Okay, so a lot of people that eventually go down the Wim Hof method path eventually usually end up also learning about the Oxygen Advantage too, because you really need to learn both sides of the coin, and Oxygen Advantage focuses a lot on carbon dioxide. Okay, and that's one thing about breathing that a lot of people don't understand, or they don't know, is that a lot about breathing actually has to do with carbon dioxide. Okay, so like for example, what makes us breathe, what helps us breathe, what triggers us to breathe, it's not oxygen. So a lot of people think oxygen begins to decline and it gets too low and then it triggers us to breathe. So that's not the case. So what happens is, like, carbon dioxide begins to build up in the blood, in the system, and when the carbon dioxide hits a certain, like, a threshold, it then triggers you to breathe. It sends signals to your system, to your mind, to breathe, and then that's how you breathe. And so a lot of people in today's society, through over breathing and shallow breathing and stuff like that, they've basically turned their body into their system into a state where it's not very tolerant towards carbon dioxide. Because they overbreathe, they'll breathe in all this oxygen, and they kind of pump out the carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide levels are low in the system, and so they become more sensitive to carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide only needs to rise a bit before it triggers you to breathe, instead of rising a lot more. So you tend to overbreathe, because that carbon dioxide, that threshold is a lot lower. So a lot of people, for example, they overbreathe, or they feel like they're always short of breath. It's not that they're short of oxygen. If you measure your oxygen saturation, you get one of those pulse oximeters, put on your finger, you're going to find your oxygen saturation pretty high, in the high 90s most of the time. It's because your body's not adapted to carbon dioxide. That's what gives you that feeling, that shortness of breath, where you feel like you can't breathe. When you're holding your breath, for example, and that urge to breathe arises, that air hunger rises, that's because carbon dioxide is increasing. So when you're, for example, if you're like, if you're like an MMA fighter, like Alan, then you would want to have a higher tolerance towards carbon dioxide, because not only is that resilience towards stress, and stress can come in many forms, but at the very highest level of world performance, obviously someone like Alan deals with a lot of stress, not just outside, but mentally himself as well, and the better you can handle stress, the better you can perform, right? So, you don't crack under pressure as much. You don't break under pressure, you're able to go a lot further, and not just that, but also, like, when you start to deal with oxygen and carbon dioxide, that is also your fuel as well. And a big guy like Alan, that's a lot of muscles. That's a lot of oxygen that he needs to fuel those muscles. And if he's not breathing well, then it's going to tire him very, very easily. His energy is going to get sapped very easily. That's why you see a lot of the bigger, more muscular fighters or sports people, they're usually the ones that don't have the best cardio. It's usually the kind of people that are kind of more leaner, athletic kind of bodies. And that's just, it's just like literally some have more muscles that need more fuel, some have less, and, and there's certain things when you go a bit deeper into these things, like, for example, when things like Oxygen Advantage and then other things like XPT and Brian McKenzie's Out of Breath, all these kind of different things, they talk about how you can kind of build these things up over time, and you can, and I don't know if you know XPT, but that's Len Hamilton, one of the world's greatest, big wave surfer, and he learned from Wim Hof. He also learned from Patrick McEwen, and he started putting this thing together called XPT, which is kind of like breathwork, but more like, high level performance,
Yes.
for high level athletes and stuff. So, if everyone can handle stress better, but also keep their energy, like be able to manage their energy better, because it literally is the fuel. It's your engine. And if you're constantly redlining your engine, then you're going to burn out pretty quickly. But if you learn how to micromanage your energy, like for example, if you're in the cage, if you're fighting, like, if you're just hanging back, and you're just kind of measuring distance between each other and you're not really engaging yet, you don't want to be breathing in a way, or you don't want to be full tense where you're burning yourself out, you're burning out your energy, right? You want to stay nice, relaxed, flowing, and then on impact, boom, that's when the energy explodes, everything contracts, and boom, you go, and same for like things like jiu-jitsu. When I do jiu-jitsu, for example, a lot of people I see when they do jiu-jitsu, they are like, when they start to panic, when someone's on top of them and they're crushing them, they start to panic. And a lot of times you see them start to mouth breathe, and then mouth breathe, and they're in this really highly sympathetic state, fight or flight kind of state. And when they're in that state, like, they're not thinking their best. Like creativity, logic is kind of gone, and, so like, like a purple belt, when they're tired, they become a blue belt. When a blue belt gets tired, they become a white belt, because the first thing to go when you're tired in your mind is your thinking. And really, what does that mean? That's your creativity. That's why you always see, like, in the fourth quarter in sports games, or like, the championship rounds in fighting, it's usually in those rounds that people start to make mistakes, and that's because the engine is the energy is running low, the fuel's starting to run low, and everything's starting to get compromised, So, whereas you see those fighters like, like a Floyd Mayweather or a Manny Pacquiao that have, incredible stamina, incredible, endurance, they can go all 12 rounds, like a lot of times the first 6 rounds, it's pretty even. It's the last 6 rounds when one starts to fade and the other maintains or increases, steps it up a gear. That's how winners are made,
No, it makes absolute sense. Because like you're saying, if you are constantly putting yourself under stress, there's a constant buildup of carbon dioxide within the body.
And there's lactic acid.
Yeah, lactic acid as well. And if you are able to train your respiratory system to a point where it is able to handle higher tolerances of CO2, then you're able to sustain that energy longer.
Like your engine, your fuel tank is expanded, like it's extended a lot, So it's like everyone can benefit from breath work, because everyone can breathe better. Everyone can develop more carbon dioxide tolerance, Everyone can, there's always something that everyone, no matter who you are, there's something that you can do in the breath to improve it. Because it literally is it's the most fundamental element that we need in our survival, We can survive for weeks without food, days without, water. But with the breath, with air, without oxygen, 6 minutes without oxygen to the brain, and our brain begins to die. We begin to, get brain damage, So, it's literally like the most vital thing, and it's also the most overlooked thing as well. And it's making a turn. It's making with all the science and all the people that are getting into it now, it's really making a turn, and I think it's a bit of a secret, to be honest, because some of the top performers are using it. Like, for example, Brian McKenzie, he's trained one of the greatest fighter of all time in the UFC, John Jones, and so people like John Jones, the people at the top, even Alistair Overeem is a student of Wim Hof. The Gracies that created jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, they all do breath work, and a lot of them keep it a secret because it's what gives them that little edge, that unfair competitive advantage over their competitor, So right now it's starting to kind of break into the mainstream a bit, but I think there's a lot of people that do it, that train it, that use it at the highest level, that aren't, they don't shout about it on rooftops, because obviously it's a very powerful tool to have, and if you're a fighter and your competitor doesn't have this tool, Like I don't know if you ever watched the, Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman. George Foreman was banging away Muhammad Ali, and and Ali was waiting until George Foreman tired out. His mouth dropped, began mouth breathing. As soon as he did that, his jaw dropped, began mouth breathing. Boom! That's when Ali went in for the kill.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting stuff to me. I find it very fascinating as I love physical sports, and I love the aspect of becoming better or performing better as well. And always
do you run? Do you run, or what do you do?
I've gone through few different phases. I used to do a lot of martial arts when I was younger, and then I went into powerlifting. And so it was a lot about breath work as well. Like in powerlifting, when you're lifting so many kilos off the ground, or when you're squatting and stuff, like your breath has to hold you. And breath is everything in that work, because the way you breathe for that explosive power, the way that the breath keeps your core tight and protects your back, and the diaphragm holds you, it all comes into play, I believe.
Yeah. Diaphragm is a big factor for your posture, so I'm sure it helps with the weight powerlifting. But yeah, I mean, for pretty much any sport aside from swimming, like really try to keep it nasal breathing. Nasal breathe as much as you possibly can. Like just think about, for example, a racehorse. Do you ever see a racehorse ever use his mouth to breathe?
Right.
At full pace, it's just nasal breathing. It's all nasal breathing. You look at all the animals; they're all nasal breathing. When it's mouth breathing, it means it's sick. It means there's something wrong. And for humans, it's the same thing. We're not supposed to mouth breathe, unless we're really exhausted or something, or we're doing a particular breathing technique like the Wim Hof method. But if you're unconsciously mouth breathing a lot, honestly, that's one of the biggest things. It's one of the worst things. When you shallow breathe into your chest and you're mouth breathing, it's one of the worst things. You're constantly in a sympathetic state. You're constantly redlining your system. You're going to burn yourself out. Like you're running on fumes. You're running on empty. And it's one of the biggest changes someone can do is, if they're mouth breathing, don't switch it to nose. Make sure you're nose breathing as much as you can, especially when you sleep as well. And breathe from the belly, breathe from the diaphragm, and not the upper chest. As in, you can breathe into the diaphragm first and then fill up the chest, okay? But don't just breathe into the upper chest, unless you're doing it on purpose, like you know what you're doing. Otherwise, keep the diaphragm first, Yeah,
it's also the masses don't really do that, right? You see a lot of people mouth breathe.
A lot of mouth breathing, but also a lot of chest breathing, upper chest breathing. And then it's very easy. The listeners, your listeners, your watchers, your viewers, you can do a real simple test. Just put one hand on your belly, one hand on your chest, okay, and just take 10 deep breaths in, and just observe which hand moves. And if you, for example, when you breathe in, you're breathing like this, like that.
Yeah.
You see how much my shoulders are rising up, and I'm kind of expanding vertically. If you're doing that, then then you're breathing suboptimal. If you're kind of expanding your diaphragm, you're like, and you're breathing into the diaphragm, and you're expanding the belly, then good, keep doing that. And really kind of expand the range of motion of the diaphragm as well. Because it is a muscle. The diaphragm, it's a muscle that you can train just like any other muscle, okay? But you need to train it specifically, because if you just go for a run and you feel your lungs are burning, that doesn't actually work at your diaphragm. You need to specifically do certain things to train your diaphragm, okay? So you can easily look at things like training mask, or like different kind of breathing techniques, breath holds, breath retention, apnea training, to really focus on strengthening the diaphragm. It is the most important muscle. It is the most important muscle in our whole.
Yeah, and that leads me to the next part, which was I normally ask what are people's favorite exercise, but for you, I would ask you, what is your favorite breathwork exercise?
Favorite, I mean, it's one of those things that's difficult to answer because, you know, you have different breathing techniques for different things. But I think overall, I obviously have a soft spot for the Wim Hof method because that is the first kind of breath work I've experienced. And they often call Wim Hof method the gateway drug to breath work because it's so powerful and it's such a kind of like, it's very easy to do. You know, it's not like, say, holotropic breath work or rebirthing breath work where you need to, you know, you lie there and breathe for like an hour or two, you know. It's something that you can do like in a few minutes and you feel it. You feel the effects on it very, very quickly, straight away almost, you know. And so it's very powerful and very simple to do. And I would say it's probably one of the techniques I would do almost daily, I would say, almost daily. But the most important one really is breath awareness. That's the one that most people overlook. A lot of people, when they look into breath work or talk about breath work, they're always like just talking about this technique or that technique and, you know, whatever. But one of the biggest things is just actually being aware of your breath. That's to me, that's one of the most important things. And that's one of the things that it sounds simple, but it's not that easy. And it's kind of like, it's like mindfulness. It's like meditation. It's like, you know, when you train meditation and mindfulness, for example, after a while, you can really begin to just observe your thoughts. And you can always observe them in real time. Like you can see yourself reacting. You can see yourself, you know, behaving a certain way, you know. And you want to have the same kind of relationship with your breath. So you want to be able to really pay attention to your breath because your breath, you know, the different rhythm and pattern of how you breathe, like what I mentioned at the beginning, right? It's like your breathing pattern follows your state, but you can flip it around as well. So if you can really begin to tune into your state, you can begin to really tune into your breath. If you tune into your state, like for example, like a panic attack, you know, like a panic attack, a lot of people that have panic attacks, they feel like, or they think it comes out of the blue. It just comes out of nowhere. But in actual fact, like an hour before a panic attack, there's already, up to an hour before, there's already like kind of things that are just changing in your physiology, in your body, you know, like your respiratory rate, you know, your heart rate, different kind of things are starting to change, you know. You're just not aware of it, you know. If you were aware of it, you could have easily possibly averted that panic attack, that oncoming panic attack, or maybe blunt the force of that panic attack, you know. You know, and it's kind of like, for example, like a mechanic. You know, you can have like an expert mechanic, right? And they could look at a car and listen to the sound of the engine and do a few things to it, and you know, be able to tell, okay, what kind of health that car is, you know, and it's got maybe like 400 miles left before you need to change something, you know, or you know, blah 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 blah, something like that, right? Whereas someone that has no idea about cars, like myself, right? I look at a car, I'm like, okay, does it switch on? Does it switch off? That's all I know. That's all I care about, you know. Whereas, like, you know, so it's the same for the human body. If you really learn to really be aware of it and really start to really understand and read all these little kind of little things about your body, you can really start to see that your state is something that you can control. So, like, for example, like a panic attack, anxiety attack, all those things. I'm not saying that these are all cases. Some people are having they have a proper reason, have a proper condition where that happens. But a lot of the times, like for example, me from before, I'll be battling with a lot of anxiety. And a lot of times for me, thinking back, it's because I was mouth breathing. I was either holding my breath, I was mouth breathing shallow, and that exacerbates whatever is going on in my head, you know, that negativity, and it gets worse and worse and worse, you know. So it's the breath is like everything, and if you can really pay attention to it, you can start to pick out, okay, I'm holding my breath, I'm breathing in a certain way that doesn't serve me right now, and you can change it. You know. So, and your breath, literally, your breath tells a story. It tells a story of your state. Okay, so if you can control your breath, I'll be aware of your breath and master your breath and be able to control it, then you get to write that story. You know, you become the author. You know? So it's a very powerful thing.
Another beautiful analogy and example. Thank you, Brian. We're reaching to the tail end of the interview. Just wanted to ask you, what are some of your morning routines? What does it look like? Do you have a morning routine?
Yeah. I mean, I used to have like a kind of fixed morning routine where I do certain rounds of this breathing and that breathing, and then meditation and stuff like that. So I just keep switching up these days, whatever I kind of feel like I need in the morning. So right now, like just in the last week or so, um, you know, cold shower in the morning, cold shower just to get the system going. I will do my best to try and go out and to get some sun in the morning to just kind of set the circadian rhythms and the different kind of clocks in the system. Just kind of set that, get that synced up. And then, I'll have my brand of mushrooms. So I have this company that called Alpha Dynamics, which does medicinal mushrooms. So things like cordyceps and reishi and lion's mane and chaga and turkey tail, stuff like that. So I don't really take too many supplements, but I take that. So I generally at the moment, I take lion's mane and cordyceps in the morning. And it's a great kind of tool to kind of just give you your mind, body, just kind of like just this boost. And then after I drink that nice tea, I do some breathing right now. So right now I'll do a few rounds of Wim Hof method, and then I'll do a few rounds of maybe some box breathing or combat breathing, and then maybe some breath holding or some apnea training, just to improve CO2 tolerance and also kind of help increase lung capacity. There's this thing called the 5 Tibetan rites, which helps increase lung capacity. So sometimes I do that, which is just kind of 5 basic kind of asanas or different stretches in yoga. And then right now I've got something new called I think it's called a Shaktimat. And it's like, have you heard of them? It's an acupressure mat. So it's like a mat with all these needles and stuff coming out of it. Like hundreds and hundreds of needles on it.
Yeah, I got one from, I got the bulletproof one, which is very similar, which is the same. Yeah, and I've tried it.
Comes with a pillow.
Yeah.
Have you tried it?
Yeah. I got the mat from Bulletproof, and it's like little circles with all these spikes, and there's like a gazillion of them. Yeah.
Besides from doing that, I've been just lying on that, and like sometimes I fall asleep on it. It's like one time I fell asleep for 2 hours, and when you come out of that, it's brutal. It feels like your whole back is just sunburned. But I usually stay on there for like say anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes, and I love it. I just feel great afterwards. And do you do breathing before you get on it yourself?
Apparently, if you do breathing while on the mat, it just takes things to a whole nother level.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the first couple of times I did it after breath work, and the first couple of times I started tripping out. Like I started having like a bit of a psychedelic trip. So I don't know what was happening, but something was happening. But for me also, like it kind of parallels an ice bath for me in terms of when you get on the mat, it's quite intense, the pain, the spikes, going into you. And then when you begin to kind of slow down your breathing, you kind of let go and just kind of relax your body, relax into it, then it becomes manageable. And then you ease into it and you adapt, right? So it's very similar to the whole process of an ice bath. Less intense, but similar process. But what I also found is when you do the Wim Hof method breathing, when you do the breathing, so what that actually does is, have you ever heard of Rhonda Patrick? So Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she talks about this a lot. Yeah. And basically when your blood, when your system gets alkalized to a certain level, I think it's above 7.6. I could be wrong, but I think 7.6 or 7.7 pH, blood alkalinity. So when it exceeds that, I believe, so when it exceeds those 7.6, 7.7, your pain receptors uncouple. So your pain receptors begin to fall apart. So that doesn't mean that you don't feel pain, but it becomes a lot more manageable. It blunts the force of the pain. So that's why when we get into ice bath after breathing, it blunts the force of the ice, the cold. But also you try it on the acupressure mat. Like do it without breathing and do it with a couple of rounds of Wim Hof method, and you'll find that it's a small difference, but it's enough to make the sensations of pain a lot more manageable.
Right.
So that's my daily routine right now, and I use the Theragun, that percussion.
Yeah.
That's great. That feels like a jackhammer.
Looks intense, but it also looks very effective as well.
Yeah.
And final two questions. If you could only send one single line of SMS text to yourself 5 years ago, what would it be?
Probably just to say, keep going,
Mm.
and just kind of just trust the process. Like, things are going to work out. Because I wouldn't want to change anything, to be honest. I wouldn't really want to. Yeah, I wouldn't want to change anything. Like, I am pretty happy with my path so far. I'm pretty happy with where I am right now. Obviously, it's not my final destination, but I'm pretty happy with my life and everything around it, everything in it. And I mean, it's not perfect, but I'm pretty happy with myself, my life. So I would just tell my younger self to just don't worry, just keep going. Like, I know my younger self, and my younger self is a bit of a stress head, and is always worrying about things and overthinking and but I had to go through that kind of stuff to get to where I am. So I probably wouldn't even send that message.
Thank you for everything, Brian. And finally, how could people reach out or learn more about you?
Yeah, so I guess if you're in Hong Kong, if you're in Asia, I do travel around Asia. So my website is Primal Breathwork, so Primal BW, Primal PRIMAL BW.com. But mostly it's Instagram right now. Like, most of my updates and everything on Instagram. If you want to follow what I do, it's mostly Instagram, and the handle is Primal Breathwork. So PRIMAL Breathwork, BREATHWORK. And yeah, that's pretty much my two channels. I don't really use Facebook or anything like that. Or you can shoot me an email, brian@primalbw.com. Yeah, just reach out. Even if you're not in Asia or Hong Kong, just reach out. I mean, I'm from Australia, and I actually have quite a few good mates in Australia that are instructors as well. So if anyone needs any suggestions or advice as to who to go see in Australia, if you want to kind of learn this stuff, hit me up. There's a lot of great people in Sydney and Victoria, and I think all over actually now. So yeah, so cool.
Brian, this conversation was not long enough for me. There was so much more I wanted to ask, but we'll leave it for another time. I'm sure we'll be able to revisit all of this another time. Buddy, you inspire me. That you've shared so much knowledge, and I have always enjoyed our conversations. Thank you so much, Brian.
It's awesome, dude. Thanks, Kev, for having me, and all the best with your business ventures, and yeah, look forward to catching up next time.
Cool. Take care, my friend. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. All the links to the show notes will be available at kevinleesocial.com, spelled KEVINLY. Conversely, if you have any interviews that you'd love to recommend, please send it over to kevinleesocial@gmail.com. I'd love to connect. Thank you. Until the next episode.